So we said, given that we don't have a lot of cases, and given that we can put down some very clear guidelines about how to conduct yourself in this business, we run the risk of seeing a lot of this business go underground if we continue to stay closed for a long time. And we had the evidence to show that. So we ran the study asking that big question, how long can you afford to stay closed? And I said, the danger here is, our argument was, our thesis was, if you keep things closed much longer, stuff is now going to start pushing underground. And we had photographic evidence of it. People were sending us pictures of people doing hair in garages and stuff. We said, then you lose them. They fall out of the system. They don't have a business license. They're not going to pay taxes, and you won't be able to send an inspector in to really check them out. This could be bad, not only in the immediate, but down the road too. And that sort of resonated with them. And so I think, you never know, but I think that's kind of how we played the chess game and got back early.
So just so everyone knows, apparently we can record this. So I'm doing that if that's okay with everybody. It just certainly makes it, much easier when you can't recall something. You'll actually have a means to go back and re-listen to this. So we missed the first part, but at least we'll get some of it. So, I mean, based on what you're saying, Greg, then, I mean, it is conceivable that the same thing will happen here. I mean, we've sort of assumed that these types of services will be the last to reopen, even though that's not what any of us want, because we're all walking around with, funky heads of hair. But it is conceivable then that it could be possibly sooner rather than later. And if that does end up being the case, are there best practices that these types of services, owners and operators need to be looking at and considering now?
Yeah, 100%. So what we discovered was, when the industry did open, and of course we were 2 weeks early, so I think some people were still kind of at home reading books and stuff.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that came up in terms of scrambling to reopen was determining how your space can be successfully physically distanced. So how can you manage, like, these are called engineering controls, right? So how can you manage the space? How can you direct traffic? How can you eliminate people being closer than 6 feet together? And so that takes a lot of thought. So you almost have to walk into your space with a tape measure, spend maybe a whole day in there figuring out, this is 6 feet. I can't, I have to, if somebody's going to stand at the reception desk, then we need to draw a piece of tape here so that nobody walks into that space, because there's no way for them to coexist without getting close to one another. So that sort of number one is, best practice is, determine how you can best engineer a physical distance a protocol at all times in your salon or spa or barbershop or whatever. So that's a lot of work. And then the second part is, of course, your PPE. What do you need for PPE? You need masks. We need masks on both client and operator. If the client cannot wear a mask, they're getting a facial, they're getting an upper lip wax, they're getting a shave, we recommend a level 3 mask and a face shield and a towel for the client. So the client's lying there, no mask on for whatever reason, and suddenly they sneeze. What are they going to do? They should have a towel in their hand so they can put it up. And then the operator should have a shield on so that they don't get any droplets, and a mask as well. So that's in the rare event where you cannot get a mask on the client. And this is why some provinces have said no skincare, because you can't do skincare without, usually you can't do it without a mask. And then the third part really is just in terms of client education and client knowledge. And that's really critical, because you cannot have people walk into your establishment and not understand what the rules are going to be. So lots of communication outbound in terms of, you're going to have to be screened before you come in. If you do not get screened, then you cannot come in. When you arrive, you must have a mask. If you don't have a mask, we have one for $1 or $2. When you come in, you have to stand behind the tape, right? And it's not going to be like the old salon where it's hugging and lots of talking and, high-fiving. It's going to be very sterile. I mean, the great thing about salons is that it's a place of, escape and hugging and talking and laughing. Unfortunately, a lot of that has to be, put aside for now. So just setting client expectations. So it's engineering, and that includes, by the way, things like plexiglass barriers, if need be. The second thing is just PPE and getting that ready, and any sanitation materials as well. And of course, just setting those client expectations.
Greg, I have a question for you. What is the stance right now on blow drying? Because I know there's a lot of things going around. People are saying not recommended to blow dry, only to fit in certain people. Or is there an actual reason for people saying, oh, we can't blow dry your hair because of this, 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 and this? Because it's kind of going back and forth, and we're getting really confused by what services that we're allowed to do when we go back. So I'm just wondering, like, is it the same in BC? Like, are they blow drying? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it's a great question, Cassandra, and it is our number one question. And that is because this has come up in other jurisdictions and people are hearing about it. So there is some confusion. So just to reiterate, there's nothing off the table in British Columbia anyways, so that you can do anything, right? You could do any service you want. The key is physical distancing, personal protective equipment, and setting client expectations or setting up those engineering controls. Our recommendation is, and we sort of are backed a little bit by Work But Safe BC on this, is that if you can use these best practices around blow drying, limit or restrict the service. Like, do you have to do it? Is it a nice luxury that you're providing just to make the client look good when they leave the salon? If you can send them out with wet hair and it's not too cold, please do it. But you may have an elderly client who really shouldn't leave the salon if it's cold. It was actually chilly here the other day, so people were saying, no, I can't leave my client because they're actually going to get sick if I send them out this way. So can you restrict or limit? Secondly, can you use it on a lower setting, right? So instead of high, can you use it on medium or low? Thirdly, can you use a diffuser, right, to limit the blast of air? Because if some people use a concentrator, and you can imagine the air could be passing past the hair into the mask, out the other side of the mask, and then blowing all over the client that's only 6 feet away. So we want to eliminate that at all costs. So we do recommend lower speed, diffuser, reduce, or eliminate.
That's an
that's our guideline. That's our guideline.
Thanks. We were just confused. There's so many things going.
Yeah, and we actually, it's interesting because, I mean, I don't want to get into this too much, but we don't actually have any specific rules or regulations. We merely have white lines painted on the road and said, do your best to stay within these lines, use your best judgment, use your professionalism, right?
One more question. Are salons there charging a COVID fee?
Yes. So we did two interesting things that came out of our study. We did a survey over the weekend. We had over 200 responses as of last night. The answer is they're not so much doing a COVID fee as they are increasing their prices. So I don't have the stats right in front of me, but I'm just going to work from memory here. So it's 50% of the of respondents said that they are going to increase their prices. And then I think under 20%, I think it was 14 or 13% said they are adding a COVID surcharge. And then the balance said they're not doing anything. And then when we just asked a dollar amount because it's too confusing to try and get percentages or anything. We just said, on average, when your client leaves the salon, how much more do they pay? $3 to $5 is the number one. Just quickly, secondly, there is, and we're going to put this on our website, there was a study that came out from Insights West, and it stated that while consumers are not terribly happy about COVID surcharges, the interesting thing is that hair salons is the one that is most accepted. And I think it's 53% of people or 54% of people said that they would be not offended or not upset about paying a surcharge on a hair. So we were the number one, more than restaurants, more than a lot of other things. So I think people understand.
Susan, hi.
Yeah, my question is, and I hope that I ask it the right way, is obviously we've been told to reduce the number of stylists we have in the salon at the time and or clients, so no more double booking, maybe try to split shift. But where I'm getting confused is, just for example, I have 12 stylists. So if I split them down the middle, 6 each, which I can do, that's fine. But if I had more in and plexiglass, is that the same as reducing it completely in half? Because I'm still trying to figure out a way to, go from 12 stylists double booking to 6 stylists one at a time. So if I paid the money and invested in plexiglass that I can either double book and have the stylist or the other client on the other side, or vice versa. Am I asking that the right way? I apologize.
Yeah, so absolutely. You know, and just to kind of back up a little bit, Susan, thanks for the question.
Mhm.
You really need to think of your business, you know, your viability. We keep reiterating this over and over again, is that if you're going to survive, if you're going to stay in business, if you're going to be here in 6 months, you need to consider your capacity, right? So
Mhm.
you've been forced to close. Now you've got to retrofit your whole place. And then you come back and you're at 50 to 80%. And that's just a real recipe for going out of business, right? For a lot of people. I'm not suggesting you may, but I'm just saying it just gets to a point where you're out of cash flow. Excuse me, just a second. Allergies. You should see it's snowing out here. It's crazy. It's snowing like puffballs. Um, yeah. So the question is, can you? I think when we go back from our standpoint, we say, can you keep people 6 feet away? That's kind of like Dr. Bonnie Henry's number one thing, is just keep that distance. If you can't keep that distance because you're in front of, you know, you're over somebody's face, or you're doing a service and you're closer to them, then you must wear masks. So that's sort of level, it's the second level. But you're asking more about like physical or engineering controls, right? So creating that 6 feet by virtue of blocking the space. So the challenge with plexiglass we've seen anyways is that a lot of people just put up a piece of plexiglass,
Mhm.
but the air goes around it, right? So you're not really creating 6 feet, so to speak. You're just actually, in some ways, you are just putting up a piece of plexiglass, which actually could fall over and bonk somebody on the head. I mean, there are so many considerations. So if you are going to install plexiglass, it needs to genuinely like create that distance. So you know, you have to almost take a piece of string and say, are we creating 6 feet from customer to customer? And if the operator's standing behind the plexiglass, are we still creating that distance? Like, you've really got to think carefully about what that plexiglass is doing, because it's not magic. It doesn't kill viruses. In fact, if anything, it's another thing to clean. It's another thing to worry about. It's another object in the way. We also brought up the issue as, does it block the view to the exit? Does it hamper somebody to exit in the event of an emergency? Does it break the code? Like, do you have a building code that says you need 36-inch egress from any point? So if the building caught on fire, is the client able to stand up out of the chair, turn around, and safely exit that space? I mean, they're just small details, but they're things you have to think about. There's kind of pros and cons with plexiglass. It's not a magic bullet. Um, so consider it. Plus, it's a cost, right? So I know that doesn't really answer your question, Susan. I apologize. But you do have to, at the same time, if you're down to 6 stylists, well, now you're down to 50% capacity, and you need to recover from being closed. You need to recover from your investment. You know, you have to have that capacity in there. So
So
it may
another,
be. Go ahead.
while you're saying that, because it's the same thing, is if we aren't able to operate at full capacity at 50% max, are we still going to get the additional rent relief? Like, because we're obviously not going to be able to make the same amount of money if we can't operate at full capacity. So is there going to be something in place that our rent relief is now going to extend past June? Because right now it's only covering April, May, June. That's if people even got that from their landlord and the landlord was
Yeah.
willing enough to apply. So that's why it's just concerning if we are unable to do the spacing out and having to now coordinate around staff and not be able to do blow dries. Like, those are additional services that we can't do. If we have a spa, like we rent out rooms, we can't do those services. So now that's where we're kind of worried about the financial side of this all, if we can still keep going and doing this and not get the same amount of revenue that we're used
Yeah,
to
it's a
getting.
great question, Cassandra. So as far as I understand, and we did do a seminar on this, and we will publish that this weekend. My understanding is, and of course this is changing every day, my understanding is that rent relief is between the government and the landlord. And so it's not contingent on what's happening in your business at all. You're the tenant, right? So they don't base it on what the capacity of the tenant is to pay. They base it on an application from the landlord, who then passes the savings back to you. So, you know, you could be selling gold bricks in the back and making a killing. It doesn't matter. You could still, I think you can still get, I don't think it's contingent on you suffering. I think it's the application process that the landlord has to go through. I believe. Again, I might be wrong on that. I'm sorry. And of course it's changing every day, but
Yeah.
I believe that's the program.
Okay.
Because it's administered by the CMHC, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. So it's actually, it relates to the relationship between, it's sort of like a housing thing, like a rent tenant relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm curious whether anyone is considering changing their hours to accommodate the reduced capacity. You know, staying open later or opening earlier, opening on days you wouldn't normally. Is that a plan for anyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
7 days a week, 12-hour days.
Yeah.
It's
At this
interesting.
point.
Can I ask a question though? I mean, if you has anyone here sat down with an accountant and said, you know, it will offset my fixed costs, but my variable costs travel with the extra time. How sustainable is that approach?
From my account, um, honestly, I don't think we're going to be able to recoup this regardless for another year to 2 years, especially with even utilizing the line of credit or loan. Like, I guess it depends on the scenario of people. Like, I'm in the boat where prior to COVID, I signed a 10-year lease, a brand new 10-year lease.
Oh yeah.
For a new unit, because my lease was coming to an end. I had to get a new location. I had to do the renovations. So that's why I don't think even trying to get up and running, that's why my question for the rent relief is, if I can't operate at full capacity for however long we have to do this, how am I going to be able to recoup, pay back the loan, at least get $30,000 in on top of all of our product costs, the PPE. So it's just accumulating more debt essentially, and using personal line of credits, credit cards, you name it, whatever we can to get by. So that's why it's definitely stressful for a lot of people, but I guess it depends on a lot of scenarios. Everyone's in a different boat, but I know I can speak on my behalf at least that it's a struggle, and my accountant's kind of getting worried for me. So
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Again, it's just a question of because it's a whole new financial model. And I mean, as you were saying, Susan, if you're down 50%, I mean, plug that into your projections and just see what happens. And even if you were to tack on 2 extra days an hour or a day, 2 extra hours a day, how does that change things really? Like, how does it change things? I mean, from a gross sales perspective, it might look good, but when you factor in commissions or whatever your model is, right? We're all different. By the time you factor that in, plus increased, I mean, your hydro bill is going to go up a little bit because the place is operating longer. So there's a lot of expenses that travel with that opening, right? So
Yeah, and one of the reasons I did it too, because I also have to think about my stylists coming back. They're going to come back. If I'm at 50% capacity, they're at 50% less commission. They're so I don't want to open 7 days a week, but in order to get them happy and want to come back to work and get their clients back in the chair and actually have a paycheck as well, was that balancing act of trying to find, I mean, my job is to have happy stylists and pay them well. So I have not looked at it the way you just mentioned it, with how much extra it's going to cost me for those extra hours and extra days.
yeah, it's worth, I mean, I wish we had a formula but everybody's so different, but it could be worth, you know, an account. I mean, a lot of times I find, at least I know, speaking personally, I get, you know, oh boy, I have to talk to my accountant. It's going to cost me $100, but I end up paying 1,000 or 2,000 because I made a silly decision. So just speaking from personal business experience, looking back, I think in retrospect, it always would have been better to just sit down, consult, and be very blunt and just say, I just need this calculation done. I need to figure out sort of where am I like, how do I optimize, right? How do I optimize my way out of this?
I think that's a really excellent point, because I certainly wouldn't have necessarily thought, okay, I need to actually be projecting, and maybe projecting different scenarios, because we don't actually know, unfortunately, what this will look like in the fall. I just don't know. Have you heard from your members at all about different things that they're trying or have had success with at all, Greg?
Yes, I have. So we had a free form area where people could type in whatever they wanted to in our last survey around the price increases, and I haven't done a full analysis of them yet because we have to anonymize it. It's an anonymous survey, so there's a whole process. Here's a couple of things we have found though, is that people who seem to be on the best footing, or what we are reading as being in the best footing, the people with whose sentiment says, I don't feel nervous or I don't feel threatened, are the ones who increase their prices. I think, this is my opinion, but from what I'm reading from it is that they just need more money in the top of the funnel. You just got to put more in the top. And there's really no way around it, because you've got recovery, you've got, you have to pay back any potential loans. If anyone's taken the $40,000, don't forget that's a piece of debt, right? And it sits on your books no matter what. I did some back of the envelope math the other day, and it turns out to be, if you're going to kind of save on a monthly basis to pay it back, it's like a luxury car lease. Like if you want to go get a 7 Series BMW, most of us would never do that. But that's what you're going to have to save to pay that back, that $30,000 back when it's due. So when you think of it in those terms, you go, ooh, it actually is a lot of money. So yeah, Leslie, I mean, it's putting that back, putting all those factors in, right? Recovering from any debt that you've incurred. Cassandra, you were mentioning credit cards. You're looking at potentially 27% interest. That can be crushing down the road, right?
It's not fun.
Right. And you're going to have to consolidate that debt at one point, right? And then what do you do? And then, I heard somebody doing a line of credit on their house. I went, I've got a basement you can sleep in, but you can't, you cannot, it's very risky. So again, just back to you, Leslie, your question is, what we're seeing is that the individuals who are saying, you know what, I'm just increasing my prices and that's it. And if my customers can't handle it or don't appreciate it or don't understand or can't afford it, then I will take that hit now, and I will bring customers who are willing to pay. And actually, many of them are finding that customers are more than happy to pay. And like that Insights West piece study proved that hair salons seem to be have the most tolerance, right? Or provide the most tolerance.
Yeah, and I think too, I don't think I'm scared about people not wanting to pay an increase. It's more so there are salons that are going on right now that are doing backdoor services, and I can see it. I can see pictures. I can see things going on. So they're getting very desperate right now, and it's more so the loss of that. Like, we're losing clients saying, oh, well, so-and-so is doing this, so why can't I get my hair done? So, I mean, I think we're taking a loss from that not being able to open, and people are just in this case where they're just dying to get their hair done. I have somebody that's like, oh, it's my 50th birthday. I want my hair done. I want to look good. I don't want to have grays. She's literally willing to do anything to just get us to do their hair. And I'm still sticking to the same thing. Like, I can't, it's technically illegal to do hair right now. So, I mean, I just don't know how much longer we can go on for people in general. Like, it's not just a haircut. It's also people that want conversation. They want that service. They want to feel pampered. It's their mental health. Like, there's a lot more around it than just hair. So I think it's the desperation is what's really getting to people at this point. So
yeah, 100%. I mean, I always say hairstylists are like, they're magicians, craftspeople, chemistry, chemists. Anybody in this industry knows that we do a whole bunch of stuff, including making people who have tears running down their face feel better about themselves, right? I mean, how many times have we hear a lot of stuff that even therapists don't hear. So there's always that temptation, and I was saying that earlier, is that when we went to the government, one of our not warnings, because we didn't want to go in saying, the sky is falling and this is going to be bad, but we said, just be aware that there's a very serious temptation for a stylist to take the $500 cash or the $300 cash and just do that color job in the garage. And you know what? They'll still get the CERB. They don't, it just, when you combine temptation with desperation, it's a bad combination. And so thereby, and that just grows every day, and we're seeing it, and we're showing them evidence. And I think that from an economic standpoint, I think that's when the economic side of the government came in and said, we really don't want that. That is really, that's bad for us. Like from a future tax revenue perspective, from an enforcement perspective, it's not good. And I think we as the industry also say that is completely unprofessional. That is the worst possible thing we can do to our industry. We'd be our own worst enemy if we did that, right?
I think too, because I mean, we've always had the health and safety in place since we opened and operated hairdressing altogether. So that's why I think they're seeing retail stores opening. They're seeing all these other places opening that I've gone to some of these places. And let me tell you, they'll ask you the series of questions at the front door. ask you to use hand sanitizer. We don't have to wear masks. We don't have to do anything when we walk into these retail stores. So who's to say somebody says no to the series of questions, has COVID, picks up things in a store, puts it down? There's nobody that's going to be wiping down that vase, or nobody's going to be wiping down something that somebody picked up and put back down. Whereas for us, we're saying, don't touch product, don't touch this, let us get it for you. Like, I feel like we have more safety procedures in place than a lot of these retail stores. So that's why it's kind of getting, I get the proximity that we do our clientele and we're physically touching people. But at the same time, I think we're a little bit more well equipped to deal with so many diseases, viruses, lice, you name it, parasites. Like, we're already in this whole health and safety thing. So I'm just confused as to why it's, I hear we're going to the end of the summer. I hear we're opening next week. I hear we're opening at the end of the month. Like, we still don't have literally any kind of idea when we're going to open.
Can I jump in for a second? I was saying, like, I was making the point that when a client comes in, first off, we can control who and when and how many. And they walk in our door and they now have us as a personal guide, right? So I come in, okay, I can spray your hands with hand sanitizer. You come with me. I'll lead you to, this is where you need to stand. This is, you know, unlike retail stores.
Yeah,
right?
it's like everyone running everywhere. Like, I swear, I think everyone was bumping into my cart. They're trying to get by. Like, it's like HomeSense opened and everyone went nuts, and that was it. So it's funny to see that people are just kind of running into these retail stores, whereas we have the guidance. We're working one-on-one. We have all these regulations in place. So it's kind of disheartening that we keep getting like pushed aside and pushed further and pushed further. And we're like, okay, well, what do you want us to do now? We're collecting all of the things. We're learning from other places that have opened beforehand. So how much longer can we all keep going?
Can Leslie, do you mind if I share my screen just to kind of follow up on some of this conversation for just a sec? Just a sec. I'll just sort of show you guys because this kind of speaks to. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess I should probably expand this, make it a little bit bigger. So I'm not gonna, it's a big document, but basically we put together something that just says suggestions to assist the personal service industry return to work. So this is actually a follow-up document to the one we did. But basically, like you can see, it's a fairly thorough document. It's like 11 pages long. And we get into, like, I do my little introduction and we talk about the scope of the sectors, and then we actually break it down into like who does what. We know and acknowledge further kind of to what you were saying, Cassandra, is that, you know, there are all these areas and sections and that we are well trained and we know what's going on. But then we actually called it our plan to reopen. And we talk about the physical space. We talk about the amenities, you know, like right down to like, right, if clients bring in a beverage in a disposable cup, used cups are to be safely disposed of. So we got really, really detailed when we presented this to the government. You know, reception in common areas, like how to do it, what we expect, no pens, no pencils. Even this box of facial tissue, we went into detail to talk about how that facial tissue should be distributed to clients. Like, don't just stick it out there so people can touch it, but self-serve. It should be stuck to the desk so people can just take the top tissue out, you know. And then we just kind of went on and we talked about the retail area, the interiors, and we sort of everything.
Hello?
So we really went through even like the departure payment guidelines. So we kind of really talked about how detailed that process and procedure was. Again,
So,
congestion management.
Greg, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think we may have lost people.
Oh, okay.
It looked like it.
Okay. Are they bailing? Am I
be at the bottom of the screens?
Sorry?
I think they're just at the bottom of the screen.
Okay, perfect. Okay, yeah.
If you scroll through,
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
You guys all, I actually lost complete service and got bumped back in, and then everyone vanished. So okay, sorry, Greg, carry on. All good.
Yeah. So that's about it. You know, I mean, I even said in here, like, you know, we suggested things like client cancellation fees waived, and the government said, why? And I said, well, because people might be pressured to come in, even if they feel sick, but they're going to pay the cancellation fee. So we would like to recommend to our members, and they really appreciate it. They went, okay, tick that box. Remove head massage from shampoo services. It's amazing. The government didn't even think about this part. They were like, oh, yeah, that's right. You guys do head massages. I said, it can last up to 15 minutes. And our provincial health officer has said, reduce time, because time equals exposure. So sorry, guys, no head massage. It's the 70s again, right? Rub-a-dub and out you get. So it's just sort of that level of detail that I think the government needs to hear. And then, of course, we did the, you know, provided links from our own survey and sentiment analysis. So I think I'm just sort of speaking kind of to, like, there's a perception, I believe, in the public at the government level that we're just hairdressers, right? We've heard this before. Like, yeah, you guys cut hair, whatever. It's a big party. It's music. It's fashion. It's this, that. No, we are professionals. We went to school for this stuff. And we have a program called Beauty Safe, which is an extended online certification course that really gets down to the nitty gritty about like stuff like, you've got to put a plastic bag in your garbage can. And we get into these severe details, right? Like what temperature to wash your towels in, and how long to leave a virucide on a surface. And then that's a decal that goes on the wall, so that when a public health inspector walks in, they go, oh, you know that you're supposed to wash stuff in 65-degree water, right? Because most people don't. So it's all of these things. And when we presented this to our government, I think they took us a lot more seriously. I mean, I don't know, because I wasn't in the room, but I do believe that they kept calling us back, and they actually to this day still call us back and want more input, and they pass stuff by us. So yeah, I'll just wrap up real quick on this, because I can talk. I'm one of these people who can talk. WorkSafe BC actually took a large portion of our recommendation document and put it into their sort of suggested guidelines, and then push that out to the industry, which is kind of the official guide. So I take that as kind of what we said, all the work we did, all the thought we put into it was taken very seriously by one of the governing authorities and used as guidance. So I think that was a bit of a, I don't know, pat on the back, victory. It worked.
We will be releasing, the chamber, a reopening plan, which is a general guideline based on what we know, but we will be offering sector-specific resources as well. And if we're able to include yours, that would be wonderful. If or whatever resources we can from you, that would be terrific.
Absolutely.
Another quick question, if I may. We're watching other stylists going back and struggling with the masks, obviously. And have you had any feedback where they can wear the face shield instead of a mask, or it's either both or only mask?
So our guidance is, and it comes from the PHO, the provincial health officer, is masks, because face shields do not provide that barrier, right? And face shields are actually designed to prevent droplets from going out to another individual. So the droplets still come out and they just flow underneath. So
okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Does anybody have any additional questions or any comments before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I'm actually going to jump in. Nice to meet everyone. And I'm just going to say hi to Cassandra. I'm Solomon with Mr. O Supply, so thank you for the order. But one of the reasons I wanted to come into this group is I don't know why you guys were closed for so long, because you guys seem like the least, given the industry we're in. So we do more industrial products, safety products. So Cassandra, that's why I said hi. She had found us, and I'm wondering how you guys are finding your suppliers for masks, face shields, and that kind of thing. Because as a supplier of general PPE to the industrial space, construction, manufacturers, it's easy to find those people because we know them already. But in your world, it's hard to find. I mean, it's easy to go down the street. There's lots of hairdressers, salons, healthcare places. How are you guys finding your suppliers? And then how do I find you guys? And finally, you know, how do we address the issue of there's a lot of people that have opened up in the last 3 months. We're a company that's been around for 5 years. Me and my partner have 10 years in the industry, so we're not going anywhere. But, you know, one of the things that we worry about is people are going to buy hand sanitizer, gloves, masks, and all of a sudden in 2-3 months, that guy in the van that you just bought it from isn't going to exist anymore. So, you know, how can we support your industry, and how can we get out to you guys so that we're providing, and especially making sure that you guys are getting the right pricing, because things have been have fluctuated a lot, right? Costs have gone up tremendously. Some things are coming down, other things are going up, like gloves. So just making sure that, you know, we can provide consistent product, service, and that kind of thing.
My supplier's great, just have to say. He's right here.
Sorry, what's your company again?
So my company's Mr. O Supply.
Okay.
We're in Newmarket, so we're just at Bayview and Mulock, but we are, you know, we're able to ship sort of everywhere. And a lot of people don't know us because we are more industrial. We have been more industrial focused, right? We don't generally have people walking in. We're not generally a storefront. We're happy to have people come in, and you know, I created some signs and put them in the front, and it's helped with walk-in. But usually we're doing a lot of deliveries. When everything started, I actually have a call with the people that have built my website to make sure that we can do some more marketing, to make sure that people know that we exist, because we keep hearing about all these, you know, yes, there is absolutely a shortage of gloves. No doubt costs on gloves are going up, you know, with the recent increases in cases in South America, that is putting a bigger strain on things. You know, hospitals, especially with the care homes, with what's been going on there. You know, we haven't been able to get N95s for, last time I got N95s was April. You know, but that's also because a lot of people, when this all started in January and February, they were buying product here and shipping it overseas, you know, and that isn't necessarily product that they or their family needed, because if you're in your house, I mean, do you really need a mask? Do you need that type of protection in, you know, a closed environment? If you, let's say you know, live in the country, right? And your closest neighbor is a couple kilometers away.
So I'm curious, sorry to interrupt you, Solomon. I'm curious whether you guys have already started to procure your PPE, and if so, what you've been looking at bringing into the salon.
I think we're all, like, I've been accumulating things for the last few months of just seeing what's going on, what we need. Every week we're on a phone call, another meeting with a lot of other, actually Suzanne's in it as well, same with Michelle. We're all talking about what we're doing to prepare. Like, we are ready to go. It's just a matter of, I mean, getting a date to open at this point. Like, we don't have an idea. I think it's going to be a panic if they just spring it on us and say, hey, guess what? You're opening next week. Because then we're like, oh my God, I got to tell the girls, I got to do this, I got to do that. I have to have a meeting with them. So, I mean, that's what we're thinking. But I mean, all of us have been accumulating, like Solomon, I've been ordering things a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, it's just a matter of letting us know when we can actually have a day to open at this point.
So Solomon, I think actually my mom went in and bought something from you guys for us. So, yeah, she like walked up, she heard from one of our clients, because she's my receptionist, and she just walked up. I forget what we got from you, so we'll be back getting more stuff.
I'm sure you will. Thank you.
And I just want to jump in and say, so my shop, I own Energy Organic Salon, and we're in the same plaza as Christine Elliott. So I'm thinking of reaching out to her staff. I've already been in contact with them about, Leslie knows I've been emailing about the rent relief stuff like crazy before this. So if any of you guys want to jump in with me, you can send me an email at info@Energy Organic Salon, because I want to tell her about how so many people are doing backyard haircuts and all this sort of stuff. So it's better for us to get in there and get going. But yeah, so if you guys want to jump in, we can kind of go at them together, maybe.
What was your email address again?
info@energyorganicsalon.com.
Perfect.
Yeah. And yeah, so Solomon, yeah, we'll be back in for sure.
Thank
And Do you guys, I'm curious, do you have plans, maybe Greg, you'll have something to contribute to this. Do you have plans to actually give your clients masks as they come in, or will you require them to bring their own and have them on as they come in? Have you made that decision yet?
I haven't made that decision.
Okay.
I thought of, obviously in the pre-screening, when we're confirming the appointments, making the appointments, masks are mandatory. And then, so they're responsible for bringing their own in, but I do have disposable ones, because if that client walks in and goes, left it at home, oh my gosh, you don't want that $300 client turning around and losing that client. So I will have them, hence I have a COVID fee. So
Right.
just preparation. Yeah.
And Greg, have you seen that? Is there any sort of best practice around that?
Yeah, Susan nailed it. Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, Susan nailed it. You've got to be able to think about your customer experience. Sometimes we can get clouded in this whole thing, and we get so wrapped up in the virus and the craziness of it, and we forget that, you know, we have clients and customers, and we are responsible for providing a seamless and wonderful experience for them regardless. And the last thing you want them to do, like you say, Susan, is walk in and say, turn around and go home, you know, because you don't have a mask. You want to be able to provide them with what they need to do, everything they need to enjoy the service.
Has anybody tried on their family to cut your family's hair like with a mask on? And the reason I ask is because you've all worn it, but you've got straps, you've got other things that are going to get in the way, and I'm just wondering what that would look like to, you know, you don't want to all of a sudden you're cutting and the strap's in the wrong spot. You cut the strap, mask falls off. Those are like contingency plans, right? Like, what do you do in the case of, you know, somebody's mask does fall off, somebody does have a coughing fit? Because those are things that we always have to think about when we're talking to our, you know, obviously you guys don't have safety officers in your hair salon, but in the industrial world, I mean, if you've got 50 people, 60 people, you've got people that all they do is look after safety. And it's, you know, okay, what happens if X happens? And Greg, you guys have done a great job of, I think you're probably one of the few people who've actually put something together, right, for a reopen plan. And the sad part is like a lot of you guys have mentioned, is you have one person, or you can actually limit the number of people that are in your building, you know, unlike a dentist who's got mouth open and stuff flying. I mean, you could probably put a person, you know, put, like you said, a piece of plexiglass, put their head through it, put their hair in it, and work through that. I don't know, but those are things that, you know, we look at, and from a, you know, safety perspective, we think about these kind of crazy things.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Greg, did you want to?
Yeah, no, real quick, I'll just say some of our, I'll just say real fast, is that some of our it's a very good point, because those loops are around the ears and that's where you're cutting. So a lot of our stylists are actually tying the ear loops behind the neck, using everything from shoelaces to like these little clips and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. And that then frees it from the area. And then, and I just wanted to say one last quick thing, is that we're hearing more stylists who are struggling with the masks, not the clients. It's hard to breathe. Yeah. It's uncomfortable. It gets wet. It's in the way. It's giving me a headache. So some stylists, we just saw yesterday, somebody actually created a headband with little buttons here, and they actually took the ear straps and stuck them in the buttons. So we're actually hearing more concern from the stylists wearing this stuff instead of the clients. So, and sorry, Christina, I barged in there.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was going to say something, but I realized, so my salon's a bit different because we're all organic. So we've dealt with a lot of people that come in that have health issues already. And I have had clients that come in wearing masks because they have severe allergies and stuff. This was all before COVID. But I just realized probably what they do is actually hold the mask, but I just realized we're not supposed to do that really, right? Because then you're touching your face. But I have had clients that hold the mask the whole service, what they're getting color done and everything. So
I think it's okay, as long as I think when they talk about, as far as I know, touching your face means sticking your finger in your eye or any other mucous membrane. So if you're just holding the mask, I think you're okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. I think we are out of time here. Thank you all so much. And thank you so much, Greg, for joining and lending us your expertise. That was hugely helpful. We will be doing this again. As I mentioned, we're also going to be including a reopening plan where that's in development right now. And Greg, you've helped hugely on that front. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. And I'll share that back with you, Leslie, and do with it, take whatever you like from it.
That would be wonderful. Thank you,
so much.
everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you. Thank
You
you.
too.
Take care.
Thanks, Solomon. You're the best.
Good luck. Everything up on our website just in case you need to have a look at some stuff, and we're always looking to help anyone we can. So
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
So you guys, I think we'll need to sign off.
Meeting.